ready? Are
Ready.
you ready,
I'm
folks?
ready.
Well,
I'm ready. Yeah.
let's crack on. Hello and welcome to this special episode of the ANF podcast from the ANF
Woo!
network. With me, Scott Casson-Rennie, Al Coates, MB, FP, PF, whatever it is. What is it? P? No.
CF.
CF, CFC.
No, CF.
Oh, CF, okay. And we're joined again. Oh, it's like we don't see her for years. Now she's here twice.
Yeah. Well,
And the gorgeous Becky Brooks.
Well, thank you.
hey.
Woo!
Yes. And I didn't
Thank
I
you
mean
have
for
that
that
the way it came
lovely
out.
introduction, Scott. That was
I didn't mean it the way it came out, but
oh,
or did I? I don't know. Oh, I've
that's
just
true.
realised my husband's name is on the.
Oh, well, you changed that because you are many things, but
I
you're not
will, yes.
him.
Anyway, no, I'm definitely not. I wouldn't want to be.
So,
There you go.
so-
Anyway,
excellent. So we arranged this kind of because we were talking to you a couple of weeks ago about the barometer, which is still doable, isn't it? We've
just
got
about.
till
I don't
yeah,
well.
four
Monday.
Yeah,
days, 4 days.
yeah.
So what we'll do is we'll give people a last little chance to do it. And at the end of it, you trailed this little snippet of information, this little Becky Brooks kind of
Gem.
gem, this wormhole that you've sort of been sucked into about
It's a little
the
nerd event.
nerd event. Yeah. Um. So
And legal
if it's
eagle.
Legal Eagle, Becky Brooks, hotshot lawyer for Adoption UK.
Oh my life! Honestly, we're all gonna get sued.
Yeah. Well,
Again. Um.
again, yeah.
We'll put them through our complaints department. They're very, very thorough. Um. So the Children's Wellbeing at Schools Bill, which
The
people may know
children's
of,
yes.
it is. Tell us about it because I'd not, to be honest, I'd not heard about it, but maybe you've just been a bit distracted of late.
Well, just maybe your average person doesn't spend as much time
Geeking
reading
out.
the text of bills that are going before Parliament.
Fair
Yeah,
point.
I think I was mentioning it because the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill, which actually just completed, I think completed committee stage today, has got a lot of things about children's social care and schools, which I thought might be of interest to podcast listeners because
Mhm.
such a lot of it is relevant, in particular to kinship care. A lot of kinship care things in there, and
Oh,
a lot of school things in there that I think are perhaps I thought that maybe some of your podcast listeners might be interested in. Um, if you people are not interested in the details
Don't
of
it's
listen.
fine.
I mean,
Yeah,
by all means,
go.
carry on listening. It might be great. Who knows? You might
Yeah, go and
find a
listen to
whole
Corn and
new
Bass.
excitement in your life and get straight on the gov.uk website and start reading this thing. Excuse me. So this is the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill. It is going through Parliament right now. It applies to England. So I think some of it intersects with bills that originally applied to Wales. I don't know how that exactly works, to be honest, but it is mainly England that it's going to affect. And I thought maybe some of your listeners might want to know some of the main things that are coming out in
Well,
it because
yes.
there's some good new stuff. There's some really
Oh.
controversial stuff and there's some good new
Oh,
stuff.
Ooh.
well,
But what
that
do you want me to tell you the stuff?
no, I mean,
Yeah.
well, yeah, but well, yes, but no, but yes, but yeah, yes, go for it.
Was
Just
it
you
was
start
in
at the
was the
beginning.
conversation that we had before we started recording more interested in this bill's going to be? Because I just
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm, yes.
Right.
Being really honest.
no, we're
That's life, isn't it? What can we do?
exactly
Yeah.
no. I think it's important that we share. So well, you
Well,
share, not we.
can well, can
No,
I ask
here
you a
you go.
question then? Because we'd
Yes.
not heard about it, right? And it's sort of come out of the blue, even you just the snippets that you were sort of mentioning. Who has driven this? Is this Labour pushing something off the back of like something that was in their manifesto, or is it um something that's maybe drawn from the care review? Because if it's got a lot of kinship stuff in, that would sort of make sense to me.
Yes. So you can see elements of the care review in there. There are some things that were spoken about in that are appearing in this. There were some things that were in the Labour manifesto that are appearing in this. There are some things that were in the ill-fated schools bill of a couple of years ago under the previous government that didn't that eventually fell and didn't make it into law that have come into this very similar to what they were in the schools bill. Um, so there are a few school specifically the register of children not in school,
Mm.
which has been spoken about for years and was introduced in the schools bill and is in a quite similar format in this bill. So it's drawing on things from from all over the show. Some of it is really fulfilling some of what was spoken about from the care review, and particularly about kinship care and some things around care leavers. Some of the school stuff is, I'm going to say, ideological differences between the current government and the previous government. There are some changes to the ways academies are going to work. You
Oh,
can see that there's been some, yeah,
oh.
exactly. So
Ooh,
there's definite stuff to go
controversial.
on. I know, right? Um, I'll
So why
just,
haven't
if
we
I,
heard about this? So why? I mean, it
I
feels
don't
like it's
know why I'm here.
yeah, that's an
Why
impossible
haven't you heard
question.
about this, you
Yeah,
guys? Come on.
where have you been?
Why don't you read this stuff?
That's what happens
Um,
when Becky takes a year off of the podcast. We don't know anything.
Yeah, basically, we have this woman who comes on and keeps us our
Yeah.
finger on the pulse.
I think if you are moving in education circles, if you pay attention, if you're reading Schools Week and those kinds of articles and Times Educational Supplement, you will have heard of it because there's been a
Right.
fair bit of controversy about it. The famous head teacher of Michaela Free School in
Mm.
London has had a meeting with the Secretary of State for Education all about it, which I think has gone in quite an interesting way, judging from all
Oh.
various accounts of it. Because the bill will bring in some restrictions or changes to the way that academies and free schools
Oh, so
are
that's interesting.
working.
So even before we get to the bill, so that's interesting because those people were the sort of the golden children of the academy system, weren't they? And oh look, uh, and so
Al's put his hand up to ask a
I know,
question of himself.
I know, yeah, my Zoom settings are going loopy. Um, so does that mean that there's this whole sort of sector of people who were the golden children of the Tory conservative kind of ideology around schools? Are they sort of having their noses put out of joint and looking for new jobs?
I think there is some element of any attempt to sort of curtail the academy's project is going to make some people feel unhappy, and it clearly has done. I think more generally, I'm seeing in the education sector, let's just say, um, prominent educationalists that previously might have spoken a lot about no excuses and those kinds of projects, more recently putting on events that mention the word relationships or inclusion. So
I saw that.
I feel like I'm beginning to see, some shift in language to try to accommodate what is perhaps perceived to be, uh, uh, what people perhaps anticipate will be a slightly different approach from the top down. Although, to be honest, I think they might be jumping the gun. I'm not seeing a massive, but inclusion's going to be, inclusion's going to be. I mean, not to get into Ofsted reforms because that is a whole nother
Oh,
massive can of worms, but
That's next week.
inclusion,
We can
yeah,
talk about that
right.
next week.
So
Yeah.
inclusion as a concept is going to be it's proposed to be embedded in the new Ofsted framework. I don't think we've really necessarily all agreed what we mean by inclusion yet, but there's a ways to go with that. So I think the language is maybe changing, and I think you're seeing around the place some subtle changes in the language that people are using to try to align a bit more with that, or naming no names and not getting into anything
oh, well,
specific. But
it's Tom
Well,
Bennett, isn't it?
I was
okay,
going to
I
say
was not
you
doing
need.
that.
And do you know what? It's funny you mentioned his name because I was going to ask about him. But for the layman who has no children in education and doesn't live in the country now, I think we need to know what these what these are.
Yeah. Well, I saw a tweet from him, and he doesn't often come up. And in the past, what he's often is incredibly abrasive and absolute. And I watched his text, and I thought, oh, he's still here. Um, oh, that's a different tone he's taking there. And then I moved on. Conflicts. What was breakfast time? So that's interesting that is happening. So that's
Hmm.
hopefully good.
Well, we shall see. I mean, it's
We shall
always
see.
we shall see. There's only so much that top down influence can bring about in terms of changing
Yeah.
individual schools. Things are complicated. Um, I mean, in terms of kinship, I just did want to mention some things because you've got people listening who are kinship carers. There's quite a lot of stuff in for kinship, and I just thought it might be worth mentioning it
Mm.
just so that people are aware that some of this stuff is coming down the line, and really also to acknowledge the campaigning work that the charity Kinship have been doing. In fact, they were all over social media again today. I think they did a march to Westminster yesterday as part of their
I saw
Value
that.
Our Love campaign, and they've really been working very hard to get kinship families more central on the agenda. So this children's social care section, there's really very little about adoption in it. Which is kind of a bit disappointing from an adoption point of view, but there is a lot of good things in there about kinship care that I think is a really good start at recognizing the value of kinship families and the support that they might need. So local authorities will have to have a kinship local offer, bit like the Send local offer. They'll have to have something on their website that gives information
That's
for
good
kinship
news.
families. Yeah, services for children in kinship care and kinship carers. That'll have to include information about financial support, health and well-being, relationships, education and training. Um, Now that was previously statutory guidance, but now it's a legal duty, so it's going to be it has to be done. And according to the notes accompanying the bill, the DfE are going to put work. It says that the DfE will put a program of work in place to increase the quality of these offers. So this is now written
Mm,
into law, and hopefully, um, the quality of what's being done will be improved. Virtual schools. So virtual schools previously have covered looked after children and previously looked after children. Now, some children in kinship care are in kinship foster care, and some children in kinship care are previously looked after, and a big chunk of children in kinship care are neither. So not every child that has a special guardianship order or a child arrangements order was ever looked after. Those children have been excluded from the kind of
yeah.
supports that looked after or previously looked after children get.
Mm.
So the previous voluntary or non-statutory extension, there was a non-statutory extension of virtual school duties towards children in need and all of the different kinds of kinship care, and those are now made statutory, so those are now a legal requirement. Um, Virtual schools are supposed to raise awareness of the understanding of
Yeah.
the educational needs of children with a social worker, that kind of thing. Um, there will be also a local offer for care leavers. So there is a local offer for care leavers, but there's going to be additions to that, requiring local authorities to publish information about accommodation and how they're anticipating the future needs of care leavers for accommodation, with some cooperation with housing authorities, providing assistance to care leavers who are at risk of homelessness. So there's some recognition of the care cliff, I guess we might call it. And also, this is a weird loophole, I think. But in terms of the legislation, because legislation protecting children from ill treatment has been brought in at different times, there
Yeah.
was apparently a weird loophole that children aged 16 and 17 weren't actually protected from ill treatment or willful neglect in regulated children's social care settings because previous legislation protected children, and at that time that was under 16, or adults, and that was over 18. So that's been rectified. So
Oh,
good to know, 16 and 17-year-olds,
wow.
you finally are legally protected from being
Twice
willful
the thing.
neglected. I know, like it's madness. There is also going to be some. Um, so I know that in Wales they're making moves to get profit making out of children's social care, aren't there?
Yeah.
There's been some talk about that. Um, in what the bill proposes to do is to bring in something called a financial oversight scheme. So the idea is this financial oversight scheme will look at the financial health of parent organisations that provide children's social care settings, residential settings, or private fostering agencies, independent, like voluntary,
Mm.
like private fostering
Yeah.
agencies. Yeah.
IFAs, yeah.
And the idea is that they can there will be advanced warning if there's financial irregularities or a possibility of the company going under. Because of course, if your place where you live depends on that, and then it all goes belly up, it's like, oh, move out,
Mm.
find it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that if there's a financial failure, there should be some advanced warning, and something can be done to protect the well-being and the safety of the children and young people involved.
Some of these
There,
things feel really like really big banners, actually. You know, I
I
mean,
think there
from
are
our
these statements
sector.
of intent, really. There are
Right.
statement. I think there are statements of, yeah, our belief system about the way that children should be looked after, really. Some of the changes are
Yeah.
quite small, but they signify they're meaningful in what they signify. They're
Mm.
also going to bring in powers for the Secretary of State to limit the profits of non-local authority Ofsted registered providers of children's home and fostering agencies. And what they're saying about that is it's future proofing. The powers will exist, but it's intended that the measures they're bringing in to scrutinise things and greater powers for Ofsted to enforce regulatory requirements in unregistered settings and that kind of thing. I think the idea is that it will reduce profiteering, but the
Mm.
Yeah.
Secretary of State will have in their pocket that there are powers to in the future to do something about that more uh,
Yeah.
directly.
Because there are, I mean, there are a lot of IFAs, because that's the sector I work in, a lot of IFAs sort of self-regulate that. But then you do see these sort of banner organizations, and you see lots of the figures being bandied around that I'm not actually sure they're correct, but it feels like a really emotive issue that people should not be, people need to earn a living, but people should
Yeah.
not be like, yeah,
Profiting out of children's social care. It feels
Yeah.
wrong, doesn't it? It does just feels wrong. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It shouldn't be an investment opportunity. Let's just
Well, yeah,
it's
absolutely.
not good. And I think one of the other things that's worth mentioning, and this goes right back to the beginning of the process, is that local authorities will now be required to offer what they're calling family group decision-making meetings before making an application for a care or supervision order for a child. So these are, I guess, it's like a family group conference.
Yeah.
And the purpose of this, really, one of the aims of this is to better be able to identify kinship carers within the family network. So this is the specific aim of doing that. So I think you can see there's a real what's the word? A real sort of focus on kinship care, on making sure that kinship care is an option, or at least considered as an option.
Yeah.
And then trying to look at the type of support that kinship care families might need, extending supports in education, that kind of thing, improving the local offer. Yeah.
I mean, I find kinship fascinating because I've been doing some work for kinship over the last between Christmas and New Year, not Christmas, New Year, Christmas and the end of the financial year, and just spending time with lots of carers, and just these common themes start to come out. And one of them is really, really like, so I'm going in there and I'm upfront, I'm an adoptive parent, and all of a sudden you can see people. No one's hostile in any way whatsoever, but you can see it's kind of a difficult conversation. And several times people have said to me, I was told if you don't take them, they will be adopted.
Yeah.
And these are people in their 60s, 70s, and you kind of go, who the hell is saying that to people? What kind of professional thinks that is an appropriate thing to say to any family member? It's just
I think
awful.
if you know any kinship families, you will almost certainly know a family that's been told that. That is a really common thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know a lot of kinship families, to be honest, but this is a common thing to be told. Or, even, take them now or else they'll go into care, and the fear, the
Yeah.
and not realizing, of course, the potential carers not realizing that if the child doesn't go into care, they'll be up to now, and I can see that they're clearly looking to change this and like equalize things. But if up until now, if the child doesn't go into care, then they'll be restricted from virtually every kind of support out there for children, because it's all aimed at children who are in care or who were previously in care. And so they put the fear of whatever into people. Take your children, or else they'll be put in care. With all the fear that brings, and stigma in some cases. Well, you and then people don't realize that actually, by not even spending it one day, if you spend one day in care, then you become eligible for all this stuff. But they're left with absolutely nothing. So it's I mean, it's right. I would love to see the things that kinship are campaigning for happen.
Yeah.
Really. But I mean,
there
are things that I'd like to see about adoption in this bill as well. But well,
but
it feels
tricky. Well,
I think I think you've got to take advantage of the way the wind is blowing, haven't you?
Absolutely.
At the end of the day.
Of course you do.
And when I'm really increasingly so, when I'm looking at writing recommendations or seeking to understand policy or thinking what policy should be, I'm increasingly saying care experienced children, previously looked after children, not just adopted children, or not just this group of children, that group of children, because the needs and the support needs are so often virtually identical. It is ridiculous that there's like a multi-tier system for children who've essentially, many of them have experienced very similar experiences. And so I think, I speak to, not like every week or anything, but I've spoke to the guys at Kinship. We have a reasonable understanding of what people are aiming for. I think they're doing a great job at the minute, and that's the way the wind is blowing. And so good for you, good.
I mean, I bumped into Lucy,
and the rising tide lifts all ships, doesn't it? So
well, yeah, I bumped into Lucy, and she said that as an organization 4 or 5 years ago there was maybe 40, 50 people, and now they're in the hundreds, and they've, like you say, they've caught the wind, but it's totally legitimate in terms of the
Mm,
needs of the families. It's
yeah,
just it
yeah,
because
absolutely.
and I've always sort of had this feeling that we're missing a trick if we don't speak. If we all speak with one voice, we are
Mm.
a community of adopters, kinship carers, foster carers, special guardians. These children, like you said, the comparative experiences of those children. That's the issue that we should be bringing to the government. Like you said, care experienced or children who are not living with their parents.
Yeah.
That's the definition.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we're getting into the hundreds of thousands of children, and that's impossible to argue against. But you know,
No, it's
it,
right. And I was really pleased last year was it last year? I think it was last year. I shared a stage with Lucy and other
the
representatives of
stage,
kinship. Shared a
Stage.
stage, yes, at
stage,
the
Becky.
National Association of Virtual School Heads Conference. And it felt good. It felt good for us to be there, not to be competing for a bit of,
Bit of the
not to be
pie.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
not to be competing, though, to stand side by side on the stage and say, these are
Mhm.
all our children, and like, thank you for what you do, virtual school heads, but also this
Try
is how it
harder.
is for us. And yeah, do do more stuff. But anyway,
Yeah.
and so
See,
that's
now,
go on.
and going on last week, you've lied to us, Becky, because you told us you're just in your cupboard all the time. You just admitted that you went out last
I
year.
did. I did. Only the once though. Only the once. And I had to take two paracetamol before I left the house, but I managed
Yeah,
it.
they really want to trolley like Hannibal Lecter, don't they, into events?
Now, one other thing on the children's social care side of this bill that I'll mention, and this I think is relevant for adopters, or it's worth knowing about for adopters. As a safeguarding measure, the bill will introduce what's going to be called a single unique identifier number.
Oh,
Right. So all children will have this single unique identifier number,
Mhm.
and it will be shared, it will be used for everything. So at the minute, kids have various numbers, don't they? You've got your NHS number, and you've got your
Yeah.
unique pupil number, and other things like you'll get your NI number at some point. There's various numbers you could be used. The idea of this single unique identifier is that all agencies that might work with a child or a family will be using the same number for all purposes. Local authorities, police, health, education, childcare agencies, all of that. And designated persons, so people who are filling in, are processing certain kinds of information, must use this number for child safeguarding and welfare purposes. And the only reason I'm mentioning it is because they're going to bring it in with a regional pilot, and the regional pilot will test the use of NHS numbers as the single unique number. And I'm
oh,
mentioning,
God.
right, so I'm mentioning that
hell's
because
teeth.
adoptive parents will know that children, when they're adopted, theoretically do get, in fact, a new NHS number, and people, some people have had varying experiences with how that has gone.
Hmm.
And I think in the past there has been, I mean, I've certainly heard from quite a lot of people through various researchy bits that I've done that would like that practice to be ended, actually. Just because if your child does have an interest in medical history, getting a
Hmm.
new NHS number can really throw a spanner in the works. I would be in favour of not changing the practice, but one of my children, it absolutely made a right mess of ongoing medical treatment. And actually, they ended up having to have a lot of quite unpleasant tests done again because they
Mm.
just couldn't get it
Access it.
together. Yeah, they just couldn't sort it out.
Yeah.
So I know that there are mixed views in adopter land about
Yeah.
the NHS number changing and how beneficial that is. For me, I'm happy with it changing, and I
I,
always have
I,
been. But
but
now it's going to be used in this way. I think we need to be talking about the safeguards really and what it
Yeah.
is that we're.
Yeah. But do you know what? I think that this could actually instigate that conversation in terms of, how it's been. Because how many times, Al, seriously, in all the years that we were going up the big house before I got sacked, um, sorry, before I was asked not to go back, how many times did we have that discussion? I mean,
oh, at least two
more
times every
than
meeting.
more than 10, more than
Yeah.
10, at least, like serious discussion. I'm not just talking about flippant discussion. And it was just it. I mean, it was amazing, like how many people were against it, how many people were for it. But like you, Becky, when trying to get medication for Jacob,
Yeah.
I have to, I'll just say his name. Trying to get make makeup for him. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's into
Well,
that anyway. But
it's
whatever.
terribly modern world.
Medication for Jacob after his adoption order came through was hell.
Yeah.
Absolutely hell. No sleep, blah blah blah, all that sort of stuff. So
But
I agree. It needs to be that, and maybe this will result in a kind of decision to be made on this sort of stuff. Or is there a way to be able to, I don't know, but yeah,
Is there a way to
but
be able to do it better? Who
yeah,
knows? But
exactly,
I
yeah,
think for
yeah,
me, I think if you know that this number's being used everywhere by all these people, and of course it would be completely reprehensible and probably illegal and against every code of employment conduct anywhere for any one of these people with access to this database to ever
hmm
run a search.
absolutely,
However, the
yeah,
more, people are only human beings,
hmm
and people do inadvisedly share Facebook posts about people's long lost whatever, and people do
yeah,
do that, and
hmm
people do hear a heartfelt tale, and you just massively increasing the pool of people
yeah,
who might, swayed by emotion, think, oh, no one will know, it won't really hurt if I
yeah,
just
absolutely,
clickety
yeah,
clickety click, and then
hmm
so I think that's something to be aware of that
yeah,
that
but
this is going to be happening.
all of that
Um,
stuff feels really like the NHS number. Like Scott, I have no recollection of anyone ever being in a meeting saying it shouldn't happen other than politicians.
mm,
Because and it was felt that it because you think to get to a point for someone to access the NHS database to get an address, you, you, you're breaking the law. People who are prepared to break the law will break the law. And so they will find a way of finding your child. If that's the ultimate concern, it's about finding your child. It's people who are that clever, that invested in finding you, they're going to find you. And I'm sure as eggs is eggs, maybe the year after COVID, I'm sure I was in a meeting where someone said, we've got consent from the NHS people, the heads of children's services, all of the people, like the bureaucrats have said, fine, we can make this work. And it became a wholly political decision. And I can't remember which one of the 45 blooming children's ministers we've had. And I'm sure that the decision was that they backed down because they were just nervous about the confidentiality issue. And I thought it's an uninformed decision. Because
mm.
and I see it all
But
the
also
time that
find a solution to that rather than just saying, no, we can't do it because of, the risks that are involved. Well, find a solution to it,
what
find,
what risks?
well, the
It's
risks
all
that they see. I'm talking
hypothetical.
about the risk. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. The risks that they see. Like, find a
You say
solution
it's
to it.
hypothetical, but I know for a fact that, well, I had never had one of my children's read books, and the NHS number is on the front on a big sticker, right?
Fine.
So, I mean, it doesn't, in some senses, it doesn't feel so hypothetical. Additionally, but my
But
children they're not across the country from where they've come from. They're in the town where they've come from.
it's
So,
absolutely my children are the
I'm
same.
very
But
happy that my children's NHS number was changed, to be totally honest. I'm completely fine with it.
Hmm.
what? But then
Even though it made it, even though
the
it was,
chaos.
yes, even though it caused chaos, because
But
in the
there's
end, I thought it was worth it. Because it's not the individual, is it? It's not the individual that's determined to find blah, blah, blah. It is the person that they tell a story to that feels kind-heartedly that if they just quickly do this, nobody needs to know. So, you know, I think whatever. I know there are different views about it, but it's worth bearing in mind that NHS number is now going to be used for literally everything.
Are they still proposing that it stays? Are they proposing it stays the same then? Or are they proposing
They're
that
not
you
proposing
get?
anything because it hasn't occurred to anyone that wrote the bill that this might be an issue for adoptees.
I was going to say, I bet that hasn't even got to them
No,
yet, is
absolutely
it?
not. So this is part of my job now is to jump up and down and go, "Hello, adopted people exist. Hello,
Hi. Yeah.
Hiya.
They've had their number
have you
changed. Hi.
considered
Yeah.
this? Hi," like this kind of
Okay.
Oh,
stuff.
some of the
I mean,
stuff I was talking to, yeah.
neutrally. I mean, I'm doing it neutrally from, and I've got my personal view about NHS
Yeah, of
numbers.
course. Yeah.
Policy
Yeah.
point of view, I'm quite neutral. And there are policy positions and policy positions, aren't there? I've got personal views about everything in the school section, but, also there are policy positions, aren't there? So there we
Yeah.
That's a
go.
different
But
that's a
that's the
different
thing.
podcast, isn't
I
it?
think, yeah, I think that's worth
Becky Brooks
looking
After
at.
Dark, personal
Becky Brooks
opinions.
having a big rant about the children not in school register. But anyway, moving on
Oh,
to schools, things that parents might be interested in. There's going to be free
yes.
breakfast clubs in every state-funded primary school. This might have been on the news. There will be a daily club at least 30 minutes long. It will include food. It will be free, and it will be open to all pupils from reception to year 6 who are on roll at school. And the
It's
first school
almost
should
worth adopting some more children for
the
that.
the first school should be offering that from
But
April
it's not.
2025. There have been some concerns raised by Adoption UK and also charities representing families with special education, children with special educational needs, about how accessible these clubs will be.
Mm,
If, for example, your child needs transport to school, will the transport get them there in time for the school for the club, or is just that
mm,
non-starter? If your child needs one-to-one support in school, will the one-to-one person be
yeah.
there so they can access the club? There's
Mm,
are a lot, obviously a lot of questions around that.
yeah.
School uniform, very exciting. The head teacher of
Oh,
Michaela School is very unhappy about this and thinks it will create massive disaster for everyone's learning and behaviour, even though there is literally no evidence that wearing uniform improves your learning or your behaviour, but never
so
mind.
Tom Bennett will be having a cow.
Uh,
You, you can't
maybe a
comment.
steak, maybe just a steak. I don't know. Uh, There's going to be a legal limit, a legally enforced limit on the number of branded items a school can
Oh,
include in
thank
its uniform.
God. Oh,
Honestly,
God.
can you believe though that this is they've had to make a law to
That's
do this?
ridiculous. It is ridiculous if you think about
So
it,
you
isn't it?
will, if at a primary school, you will not be able to have more than three branded items, and that's across your whole uniform, PE kit, summer uni. If you have a different summer uniform,
Hmm.
you know, it's like the girls have the gingham dresses, don't they? Sometimes,
Hmm.
no more than three across the whole uniform. I think it doesn't include the book bag, but I'd have to check. And no more than four at secondary school. But if you're a secondary school and you're having four, one of them has to be the tie. If you don't wear a tie, then it's three. Um,
So
I see, that's really
this,
good. I
they are
like that.
yeah.
defining, shall I tell you how they're defining branded? This is
Mm,
what it says. Branded includes anything with the school logo on it
yeah,
or
colours.
anything of such a distinctive colour or design that it would only be available from a particular supplier. So you can't just rip
That
the logo off and say, no, you've got to wear
Yeah.
our turquoise trousers with the orange
well,
trim.
and can
Mm,
I, on a really practical level, one of my children, the school brought in rules around girls wearing trousers, and there had to
mm,
be a specific sort of cut and specific again from a specific shop. And we had a girl who was genuinely experiencing such high levels of anxiety because she had to wear a certain type of
mhm.
trousers because she had a preference for sensory issues,
Yep.
all of the complicated stuff, the amount of fights and energy. So what the only way we could do it was that she would wear leggings under her trousers. That was the only way she could wear them. And you think, and is it not within the gift of a school to go, we'll cut the girls some slack?
Yeah,
Yeah, you would
of
think,
course
wouldn't
it
If
you?
you
is.
pardon the
Yeah.
pun.
Of course it's within the gift. It's
Yeah.
But
100% within the gift. The school uniform rules are the schools to make up. They could
Mm,
make up nice ones if they
yeah.
want.
And
I
the
find it,
school
I mean,
asked her.
not to get all like old lady about this,
It's,
but I went to a state grammar school. Now you'd have thought a state grammar school would be quite, fancy, posh, I don't know. But it was the 80s. We all had like there wasn't we didn't even have to wear a blazer. I
mm,
mean,
yeah,
there was a uniform. You wore your tie. We all
yeah.
wore it backwards because that was I don't know why, but that was the fashion.
that was the
And then they used to have these shirts you had to wear, but none of us liked those shirts. And it was the 80s. There was a big fashion for women wearing really oversized, like thick cotton shirts, like puffed out round the waistband. We all wore that.
Mm,
We had winkle pickers and that. I
yeah.
mean, and like somehow we managed to get an education at
yeah.
the supposedly posh school, and
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
fine, and there wasn't anarchy and whatever.
No.
Yeah.
Whatever. Don't
But
make me stop. Make
no,
me
well,
stop. The
I
whole
agree with you,
podcast has been
Becky.
me
You're
going
having
on
a
about
feeling.
uniform.
I
Yeah,
totally agree with you because a child of the 80s, high school, we had to wear a tie. If you wanted to wear a blazer, you could wear a blazer with the badge on it. If you didn't want to wear it, you didn't have to wear it. But then fast forward to when I had kids, and I remember though, because there was always this thing, wasn't there? I don't know if you guys had it as well. There was schools went through this phase of polo, and I'm talking high schools here, went through this phase of polo shirts
oh
and
yeah,
jumpers,
like a
and
branded sweater.
yeah, and the jumpers had to be branded, and that was it. And
Mm.
then they went, oh, actually, do you know what? We're going to make it more official, and they have to wear a shirt and a clip-on tie and a blazer and a jumper and blah blah. And it's just gotten out of hand now. It
Mm.
really has gotten out of hand to the point where um, the older two's uniform got paid for because they were at the school when they transitioned between the the polo shirt and the jumper to the uniform, and the academy trust paid for everybody to have new uniform. But then when Jacob went to school, his school was terrible. Everything had to be branded. I'm talking sports kit. I'm talking
Yeah.
everything except for the trousers.
Yeah, rugby socks you're going to wear
Ridiculous.
twice a year,
Yeah,
and that,
exactly.
absolutely.
Yeah. So it is. Like you say, having to make a law about it is stupid. However, if that's the way they control it,
Yeah.
fair enough. Fair
And
enough.
it's
Yeah,
because it's
perfect.
unaffordable for families, and it's no good, I don't think, school saying, well, we have a lovely second-hand shop.
And that's BS as well, isn't it?
Yeah, because, oh, yeah, all right.
Well,
All
it
the poor
is.
kids
No,
can
it
go along
is.
and
It's
get them.
BS. You
It,
know,
it's not. No,
why would
it's
you? Why
stigmatizing.
would you insist parents depend on that if they can't afford to buy a uniform?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
It's
because
there's a
like
parents
difference.
it's like
can.
having a ticket for your free school meals, isn't it? It's just
Exactly. There's a
stigmatizing.
difference between hand-me-downs from your close friends or your family to actually,
Going to an on the
Yeah.
premises
yeah, absolutely. No, I don't like
wearing
that
you.
at all.
Oh,
Yeah.
that
So
was
when
my brother's blazer last year. Ooh,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Mm. When
excruciating.
does this come into effect? Because I've still got one at high school.
It'd be a little while yet, I think.
Oh
Yeah, it's going to
damn.
be 4
We've got to
years.
have the third
Oh,
reading, then it's got to go through the Lords, then it's got to go back to the Commons. I mean, some of it we're looking at next year, I think, for most of
because
this.
Mrs. Coates had chained herself to a politician over this one. She has a cow every
I
summer.
really don't blame her. You might have, there may be time to benefit, you never know.
Mm.
Right.
There's going to be
We'll
a
we'll
lot of,
hold her back a year just to make sure we do.
And if not, you can always go to the second-hand shop, can't you?
yeah,
There's a
Yeah,
solution for you.
very
perfect.
nice. Your daughter will love that if you just walk her down to
Yeah,
the second-hand shop.
exactly.
Just come after school. We're just going in here to try on last year's smelly blazers.
I'm amazed she survived the last 3 weeks. Her mother's gone. I tell you, it's touch and go here.
She's
Well,
been
Bless her.
gone a week.
come on, Al,
10,
now.
10
You've
days.
been a parent for a long time. You ought to
I
be.
know.
Come on
Jeez,
now.
get a
Oh,
life, man.
to be honest, all of it's
I'm sure
fine.
she's loving it. I'm sure she is loving it.
We're having a whale of a time.
Exactly.
We,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
She goes to bed when she wants. She gets up when she fancies.
Exactly. Yes. There you go. She's not going to
She's got
school.
That's basically
The
yeah,
my kid's
evil,
life.
the
having a
evil
Mars
is going
bar
to
for
be around
breakfast.
shortly.
Well, you want to watch it because you'll have to get yourself on the Children Not in School register, but I'll come
Yeah.
to that in a minute. I'm
Oh,
going to just
so
mention briefly
can I say
what.
here, right? So the blooming school, like they've got a switchboard. It's one of the biggest schools in the country. So there's thousands of kids there. It's a factory. So she's got an appointment to the doctor. She's got braces, a dentist. Every time we get a flipping message off them saying, "Oh, your daughter will turn into a literal half-wit if you don't get her in school in the next 30 seconds." Because if you incrementally add 5 seconds a day over the period of an entire child's life, it turns out that they're not fit to sweep the roads.
Wow.
Honestly, I'm
Bloody,
sorry.
honestly. Oh, and they're missing form when they're not even blooming. Honestly, I get so wound up by the messages from the
I
school.
I am so with you on that. So with you on that. It's cruelty,
Hell's teeth.
actually. It's
It is.
cruel
Yeah.
to have banners up saying in the school entrance, this many missed days equals
Hmm.
this many worse GCSEs, and you do see
Yeah.
schools with that. And I'll tell you what, if you're a child with a chronic illness or a mental
Hmm.
health condition, or stuff going on at home that makes it really difficult
Absolutely.
for you to
Yeah.
attend school, is it not bad enough that you're having to cope with all that, and
Yeah.
then you go into school and you're daily
And seeing
confronted
that.
by
Yeah.
signs that says, and you're going to fail your life because you didn't
Absolutely.
go to
Yeah.
school every day. It's absolutely.
No,
Yeah.
I
I
don't know
remember
taking
when
why
out
we have a
and
mental health
thrashing.
crisis in our schools. I can think of
I
no reason.
can't
Just
imagine. No. I
who
remember
knew?
when
Who knew?
the older two boys high school, and we spoke to the principal about this as well. They had the lists up of everybody who had top attendance and blah blah. And then they
No.
were giving away a prize at the end of the year of a bike, a brand new bike. And we said to him, how about, like two of our children go to see various things for appointments for, mental health reasons and all that sort of stuff. So how are they supposed to even get on these lists? How you're not
Yeah.
being fair.
Honestly, having said that, I must put in a word here that
Balance.
teachers put the schools put parents and children under pressure over things that they themselves are under pressure
Yeah.
over.
True.
Schools
Yeah.
must, all the rhetoric around the children's wellbeing in school bill is about high and rising standards. The standards have got to be high and rising,
And rising.
right?
Yeah.
All of the time. Attendance, we're going to tackle attendance. The focus on attendance. Ofsted's very interested in attendance. You've got to,
Yeah.
in a way, the schools are between a rock and a hard place because
Mhm.
these expectations are made of them that you must be getting. The Children's Commissioner talking about having 100% attendance. We need to get 100%. I mean, you're never going to ever have 100% attendance. I don't know what, but those are
It's
this is
just
the rhetoric that comes out towards
Mm.
schools that you should be trying to achieve these impossible goals, and
it's
then they
mad.
end up pushing those onto children and families, and they're stuck in between. So I don't want to be just here doing a lot of schools bashing, to be fair.
No, no, that's
No,
true. That's true.
It is
It comes from somewhere else, doesn't it? It's
well,
not just, yeah,
some of it, to be
yeah.
fair, does, and I think there are ways of handling it in school
Hmm.
that are better or perhaps not so good. But I think if schools perhaps weren't under such absolutely intense pressure
yeah.
to reach unachievable targets, it might be
But
easier.
it, but the thing that is frustrating is that you can sort of look at those big decisions that are made at a policy level. But then the truth is that like I say, I've been working with kinship families, and this week people saying like the challenges of getting a child into school, and because
Hmm.
of the nature of the children's additional needs and the complex little worlds that these children sort of emerge from, that actually getting a child at school is quite difficult. And so we talked about last time, if we can slow down and maybe we'll be 5 minutes late, but we'll come,
Hmm.
rather than me sort of trying to drive this child there and then eventually they say they're not coming, then you would get that it all manifests in that house on at
Yeah.
8 o'clock on a Tuesday
Yeah.
morning when a child says, "Up yours, I ain't going." It just
And
really,
then what
anyway.
happens then is that the child needs to arrive at school 5 minutes late, and someone needs to say, Brilliant to see you today.
Exactly.
Really
Well
Yeah.
glad
done.
you've made it. Well
Yeah.
done. Come on, let's go and get your coat off, or let's go
Yeah.
and do this thing or whatever." Rather than
Not
5 minutes late detention.
exactly.
There's
Or a
there's
And
late
too
slip or,
yeah, there are
something
ways of
stupid like that.
approaching
yeah,
it.
Yeah.
and that'll be
Absolutely.
Anyway,
educators who are under pressure from the person up the line who's under the pressure. It'll all come down to Ofsted
yeah.
going, "Oh, why is some of your children late?" And you want to go,
Why is your
because
persistent
we,
absence rate so high?
Yeah.
Why is?
yeah. So yeah.
Um, I'm going to talk briefly about. I'm going to mention briefly about academies. I'm not going to say a lot because most of what's changing in academies is kind of technical. Some stuff about qualified teacher status, some stuff about teachers' paying
Oh,
conditions, which has been amended by the government itself. Because I must admit, on first reading, it looked to me as though it was saying something that I don't think they necessarily wanted it to say, and it has been amended about
right.
teachers' paying conditions. So that's kind of interesting. But one of the things is that the presumption or the statutory duty, that's right. So there was previously statutory duty that schools that were deemed to be failing would have to be converted to academies. That's been made a discretionary power now. So they may change some things in terms of forced academisation. The other thing is that there is currently underway a curriculum and assessment review. The bill states that once the curriculum assessment review is completed, academy schools will be expected to follow the national curriculum, which currently they are absolutely not expected to follow the national curriculum.
Are
And
they
we
not? I never knew
no,
that.
not
I
at
didn't
all.
know
And
that.
free schools are in the
Hmm.
same position.
Wow.
And in fact, we did a survey of parents recently in order to inform um, our response to the consultation for the curriculum review, and the proportion of respondents that said that their child's secondary school was not offering a 3-year curriculum in drama, art, music,
Right.
PE, computer science,
Mm.
design technology, was staggering, actually, absolutely staggering. More than half were saying that the children were not getting 3 years of that. Over what you'd expect at Key Stage 3, years 7 to 9 in England, which is like 11 to 14 before you start your GCSE exam courses.
Mm.
So as an arts previous as a person who's been an arts teacher, I'm kind of welcoming that because we know that in some places art subjects, which some children really excel in and really find success and like a real sense of belonging and self-esteem, especially if they're struggling in maths or English maybe, and we know that those are being squeezed out of the curriculum in some places. So it would be great to see. I think a broad and balanced curriculum. That is my opinion. It's not the opinion of anybody else, just my opinion.
Mm.
So and I think the other main one around schools is that there's a whole complicated thing around admissions. Parents of children who are adopted will know that previously looked after children have priority admissions in England, but it only really matters that for reception, getting a school
Mm.
at reception, and getting a secondary school at year 7. If you're trying to change school at any other time, you just get to the top of the waiting list. If the school,
Mm.
if they can give you a place, they will. But well, supposedly, but it doesn't guarantee you a place if there's a waiting list. You'll just go to the top of the waiting list. Now, in local authorities have something called powers to direct admission for looked after children. So if a looked after child is in need of a school place and they're not being offered one, or there doesn't appear to be one available, if it's a maintained school, so not an academy, if it's a maintained school, the local authority can make the school take the child. It's called powers to direct. They're extending these
Ooh.
powers to direct to include academies, which weren't previously included, and
Oh,
also
they'll
to
be
include,
happy.
not, they're not, and also to include previously looked after children, which it didn't previously include. So now there are certain circumstances where if your child needs, say if you adopt a child or a child moves in with you in a kinship on a special guardianship order, and the child is 6 or 7 years old, and you can't find a school place for them. Previously, there wasn't a lot the local authority could really do about it, but with this bill, the local authority will have powers to direct the school to take your child and say you must provide a place for this child, which is a small change, but I think an important one for
Yeah.
some people. Yeah,
That's massive. I mean, obviously, I work for a small foster care agency, and and it seems to be one of those real issues where a child is kind of they've come to live with a family, and getting them into education has
yeah.
taken, like in some instances, months.
And you need
Mm.
to get them into the right school. It's not just about find a school
Yeah,
place for this child. It's
someone who'll
about
take them. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, somebody that will be able to nurture them, the right setting for them with the right, because so many children who are care experienced have also got special educational needs. So there needs to be the right combination of support for whatever their support needs would be. So it's
yeah.
not just about getting any old place either. It's about getting the
Yeah.
right place in the right school for the child. So that's really good.
Mhm.
And the final thing that I'll mention, because I know you were hoping this would be a slightly shorter podcast
Well,
episode, although that was wishful thinking considering who
and
you
it's your
invited
fault
on.
it needs to be shorter.
Is
And
it? Yeah.
I'll explain that when you give your final point. I'll explain the trauma that you've spread into my family.
Oh,
Oh
is it about
God.
jeans or Hoovers?
Give
Don't
us your
tell me.
final point.
So,
Give us
and
your
the
final
final
point.
point, and I will see, I've left it to the end when I know there's not much time, so I won't have time to go completely off on one, is
Well,
the
go.
creation of the compulsory register of children who are not in school. So this is sometimes referred to as the home education register.
Oh,
This was going to be
oh.
introduced. Yeah, this is what was planned to be introduced by the schools bill back in, I don't know, 2018, sometime in under the previous government that didn't make it, or maybe 2022, maybe as late as that. It is in this bill in a very, very similar format. So what this will be is that every local authority will have to have a compulsory register of children not in school. Includes, and this will be a surprise to a lot of people, and this is why I'm mentioning because it's not just those pesky home educators that are going to find themselves under the scope of this. It is all children who are not registered at school, so home educators, all children who are registered at school but receive all or part of their education elsewhere. So that includes flexi school, part-time timetables, part-time alternative provision, that kind of thing. So even though your child is registered at school and maybe attending school part of the time, they will still need to be on the register of children not in school. And it includes children who are registered at further education but are 14 to 16, so
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
available. And if they're attending further education part time and they're age 14 to 16, they also will need to be on the register of children not in school. Um,
Uh, Obviously, it is a controversial issue and I only know that because you've just told me. I, all right, this is again, education is one of those things that I just don't have much time for in my head. So tell me, what is the controversy? What is the objection? Or what is the point of friction about this? Right,
uh,
Okay.
I'll sit back.
I'll set the
Need,
timer, shall I?
yeah, I might need
Yeah,
to just get a little drink of water.
yeah. Limber
It is
up,
very
stretch.
controversial among home education families, to be honest. And I see both sides of it. The idea is that it should be a safeguarding measure, and the government have cited the absolute appalling tragedy of the death of Sarah Sharif as it's
Yeah,
introduced this measure. Although this measure was already going to
yeah.
be introduced, it wasn't introduced because of that, but obviously this is sort of fed into the debate. That was a child who had been removed from school to home educate and subsequently tragically died. Um, now, and this I think often comes up, and I think there is a natural safeguarding response in anybody to want to prevent that kind of thing from happening. I think what many in the home education community would say in response to that is Sarah Sharif was in school until the April of the year that she died, and she died
Yeah.
in August. And she was very, very, very well known to social services and had been referred many, many times. And if you go and look at serious case reviews where home education is implemented, this is unfortunately what you tend to find that families have, that children have been withdrawn from school after years of interventions that haven't really got anywhere. And yes, under those circumstances, they've kind of maybe been trying to take them under the off the radar. But there are tens of thousands of home educated families that are not
And
putting
that's
their
not,
children at
yeah.
safeguarding risk. And now we all have to be on a register. And it isn't just the fact of being on a register. My children are known to the local authority. I'm known to the local authority. They send us the letters and the local authority, to be fair to them, have a statutory duty to identify children who are not in receipt of an education. And I don't want to make life difficult for them about that. They contact me fairly frequently, probably annually or something like that, and say, "Are
Mm.
you actually educating your kids in any way at all?" And I'll go, "Yeah, this is what we've been doing." And sometimes I let them come round because like almost every other agency in the world, they have no right to step over my doorstep unless they're invited in. And I think this is something else that's quite controversial as well. That really a lot of people think that it should be okay that home educators, that social workers should just be able to have entry to your home at any time they want to assess any
Mm.
safeguarding risk. And social workers don't have right to enter anybody's home under any of those circumstances. Nobody else in the whole
Yeah.
world, in the whole country, would be subject to that. So I think there's some complicated things, but I think for me personally, I don't mind that much my name being on a list because my name's already on a list and my children's names are already on a list. And actually, when I took my youngest once to the health visitor to get weighed, and I had my oldest with me, and my oldest was of school age. And they said, to him, where'd you go to school? Because that's what they do. Where'd you go to school? So I said, he's home educated. And they said, write that down on a slip, brother,
Oh, for
home
goodness
educated.
sake.
So, I mean, it was very difficult. You have to be working very hard to be visible to these people because they really want to know. But I think there are two things that I think are problematic in this bill. Um, they've brought in some restrictions on who can home educate, basically. I'm not saying that's problematic. It's the way it's worded. So if you're subject to a Section 47 inquiry, so if you're subject to a child protection investigation,
Yeah.
or your child has a child protection plan, you will not be able to withdraw your child from school to home educate without express permission, and that there will be a best interest. So the decision will be made by a local authority, not only on the education you're likely to offer your child, the suitability of it, but also the best interest of the child, based on the fact that there's a safeguarding inquiry going on. I'm slightly concerned about inquiry, like because anybody can have a safeguarding inquiry going on. But anyway, that this is a safeguarding measure. You can see
Well,
why they've done it. At the same
yeah.
time,
But no, that point is interesting, isn't it? Because if you look at then as a community of adopters and kinship carers and
yeah,
maybe foster carers, there's a much higher prevalence of it probably
yeah,
of Section 47 in terms
yeah,
of allegations because of
yes,
the complex nature of the children.
yes. And in fact, I've spoken to representatives of charities representing families with children with special educational needs, and they have similar concerns that it actually can be frighteningly easy to come under a Section 47 investigation, a safeguarding investigation that could come to nothing, but nonetheless there are implications for you. If you are already home educating a child and you come under an inquiry is initiated, uh, the local authority at that point will have the power to review whether it's in the child's best interest to attend school, and they can issue a school attendance order. So I think this is something for parents to know. And what worries me about this is I think it might put some people off asking for help.
Mm.
And I'm thinking, especially if families whose children have really had been messed about by the school system with complicated special educational needs, sometimes those special educational needs not met for years, children unable to go to school, children whose parents have been told maybe it's better for all of you if you just home educate,
Mm.
with in very challenging circumstances, and then you go to ask for help because things have got very challenging for you, and bam, safeguarding investigation, because we know that can sometimes happen. And then, they've issued a school attendance order, and now you've got to take your child back to that unsuitable school that traumatized them in the first place. I think there's issues around that. But the thing that particularly bothers me about it is They're also going to make it that the same rules apply essentially if you've got children who have who are at a special school and have an EHCP. So you'll have to ask permission to withdraw them, and the permission will be granted not only on the basis of the suitability of the education you're going to provide for them, but on whether the local authority considers it's in your child's best interest to be in school or not. And I think for parents of children with special educational needs, having the local authority suddenly having this power to decide instead of you, the parent, what's in the child's best interest is an interesting new feature of this bill. There has always been a requirement for local authorities to consider the suitability of the education, but for the local authority to also consider the best interest of the child. I think that's a new, it sort of borders on cutting across people's parental rights, I think. I think it's an interesting thing that,
Well,
and
well,
it's interesting, it's the same wording and the same conditions as for people who are undergoing safeguarding investigations,
so parental rights are right. So parental rights are complicated, aren't they?
aren't they?
Because well, aren't they? But in that there are not very many of them, if any.
No, but I just think it, I mean, and I'm
But
not, I don't want to be fear-mongering, but I just think that's an interesting addition that the local authority will want to think about what's in the best interest of the child who
well,
has an EHCP.
well, I just brought them up because I wanted to make sure of my wording, right? So because I thought because I do training and often it's the words really matter, but actually parental responsibility, legal rights and responsibilities as a parent, one of them is for choosing and providing for the child's education.
Yeah.
So you are eroding the right.
I mean, home educators absolutely know that. In law, it is actually our responsibility as parents to make sure our children get a suitable education, either at school or otherwise. So that's the thing. So I think that's an interesting thing to point to notice that that's come up. I think on the rest of it, people who are home educating their children will be getting across uh, and trying to find out what the system will be. They're going to ask for a lot of information on this form, on this register. There is information that will be compulsory for you to give to them. There's a time if you must give it within 15 days, or else they can issue a preliminary
Yeah.
notice for a school attendance order. If anything changes, you must tell them within 15 days, or else they can issue you with a preliminary notice for a school attendance order. You will have to give them your name and address, any other parent's name and address, the name and address of anybody that provides any part of an education to your child, how many hours that education is provided, if anything changes. So, like, I don't know,
It,
my kid goes to dance class. If she stops going to dance class, do I have to tell them it's changed within 15
it,
days? Or, I mean, there's a lot around that still to be worked out. It's quite a
it,
lot of bureaucracy.
it feels like, and the sort of people who've probably moved towards home education are probably absolutely exhausted by all of that, and that's maybe part of the reason why they've gone in. They've kind of stepped away from that, only to discover themselves drawn,
Hmm.
probably in a much more oppressive way, back into that level of control and restriction on them and how they educate their children.
I think there's no denying that we're seeing a rise in the numbers of families home educating. I am seeing that among adoptive families, that we're seeing
Yeah.
increases in the number of children being withdrawn from school to home educate. I've said this over and over again. We survey adoptive families like this every year. How many of you are home educated? We ask them every year, if the right school could be found, would you rather your child was in school? 80% yes, pretty much
Yes.
every year. If the right school was available, my child would be at school. And I think one of the things that there is all the safeguarding things and all of that and all of support, making sure children get a decent education and all of that, and we understand all of that. But it is absolutely, it must feel like an absolute slap in the face when you have spent years and years fighting for your child's education through school, you've got nowhere with it.
Hmm.
You've been told your child might be better off home educated, or your child's been off-rolled, or your child's been threatened with exclusion, or actually excluded, or you've just made the decision yourself to not put your child through this anymore. And that is the majority of adoptive parents who are home educated
Yeah.
are in that position to take them away, to probably give up work or give up a good part of your work, to take the cost and the responsibility for your child's education entirely on yourself. If your child does have an education, health and care plan, to lose all the support that comes with that plan and
Yeah.
be left with nothing but an annual review, which isn't going to implement anything, to have to pay every penny of the entry fees for your children's exams, GCSEs if they do them, plus administration costs, plus driving them miles to the nearest private exam centre that will take them. all of this stuff, plus paying for tutors or maybe online schooling, all of that. So you're making a massive sacrifice on behalf
Yeah.
of your child of time, money, everything to be, and then to have someone turn around and say, essentially, you are the problem. Your name needs to go on a list, and we're going to be breathing down your neck every single thing you do. If we could possibly please get to grips with providing schools that are able to meet the needs of all the children that want to go to them. Could we perhaps do that before
Yeah.
coming after home educators with a massive stick and a book?
Yeah.
It's yeah,
So
it's
essentially,
missing
sort
the
the
point.
system before you start.
That
You know.
this is my thing. We will sign on the register. I'll give them the names and addresses of everyone I've ever met in my whole life, and all of that. Whatever they
Not
want,
us.
well, we'll do it because I'm not going to break the law over it. But it infuriates me,
Yeah.
and I am seeing like I'm in quite a few home education groups and forums and that kind of thing, and I'm not joking. Daily now, I'm seeing people come into these groups. Particularly panic, like not panic, but yes, panicking really, because they felt they've had no choice but to withdraw the child from school. The child's in year 10 or something, and how am I going to get them through like how do they take GCSEs if they're not going to school? And it's like, oh my goodness, like
And now,
what has happened to you and your child that you feel you've had to do this massive
Uh,
thing? Because
yeah.
it's a catastrophe, really. Even children in year 11, their exams are in like 5 months. How do I get them to their exams? And when you try and find
yeah.
out why they've made that decision, it's horrendous. Some of the
Oh,
stories are
yeah.
horrendous. And then
Yeah.
it's like, oh, and if you don't fill this form within 15 days, we'll issue you with a school attendance order and you'll be legally obliged to send them back. It just,
It's not
register
fixing the problem.
aside, it doesn't fix the problem exactly that. It doesn't
Mm.
fix the problem, and it,
It
it kind of upsets me. It's
it's
different for
addressing
me
a different issue. Well, I don't
because
want
I
to.
chose this, but a lot of families don't choose this really.
No, I don't want to cut across your mid-floor, but if I don't get out of this podcast in about 30 seconds, I'm going to be killed because someone, a friend of mine, or someone I know, let's not get back into who are my
I was
friends,
going to say
because
friend.
yes, broader sense, someone I know, put me onto a TV program, Beast Games.
Oh, we've just watched the final. I won't tell you.
Don't say a word.
We just watched it tonight.
Me and me and what's her face, we watch it every night, and yeah, so we're totally hooked. So I have
You've
to
got a
go and watch
date,
the
Mr.
next
Beast.
episode.
You've got a date with
You've
Mr.
got to do
Beast.
I
your
have, yeah.
babysitting duties, haven't
Guys, well then, I am actually done. I've had my little breakdown about the children not in school register. I'm
you?
hoping that
Again.
some of the information in here will have been useful to some people, and I
Thank
appreciate
you.
you letting me come on and
That's
bore
all
the
right.
absolute living. I think Scott fell into a coma at one point, but you've done very well.
I've
Well
lost
done
half an hour of my life
well
actually,
done for
but yeah.
staying awake throughout all of that.
No, and is there anything on the Adoption UK website that people could look at if is there a sort of an idiot's guide?
Yes, I think there's I've done a 10 things you might care about in the children's wellbeing in schools bill. It's in the blogs, I think. So
Right. I shall
Oh,
I shall
well,
seek it out and I shall put it in
it's
the
an
show
I'll
notes.
tell you now, it's a thriller.
Is it a real
Once you've
page
seen it, you
turner?
can't unsee it.
Well, and on that bombshell,
yeah. Thank you, Becky, for coming back on again. Don't leave it so long next time, will you?
yeah, please
Oh,
don't
actually, we'll have to
ignore.
have you back when the barometer comes out.
Of
Or
course.
maybe, or I was thinking you could leave it 3 years, then have me on 3 weeks on the trot.
Yeah, well,
Could
Oh
do
yeah,
it like
yeah,
that. I would
that
love
works.
to
That
come back when
works.
the barometer comes out. We're publishing it in June.
fabulous.
Perfect.
Awkwardly situated between one of my kids'
May and July.
GCSE exams and my holidays,
Oh dear.
and like recess at
Perfectly
Parliament,
timed.
obviously, very important.
Yeah, of
Obs.
course.
Parliamentary
Yeah, yeah.
recess, yeah.
Obs, yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Becky and Scott. As always, bon jovi.
Anchovy?